What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com and Marsh Makes Comics. And today we're going to be talking about burnout, how to avoid it, how to avoid burnout with social media and with our comics or other creative pursuits. And today I have Teresa and Creed here to chat about it with me. How you guys doing?
Hello. I'm doing all
Hello,
right.
I'm doing good too.
And once again, their links are already in the description. You can definitely check them out. Is there anything specific you guys wanted to shout out before we start here?
I want to tell the Leaf Corporation to bring back Blackbird gum. Just
All
that's
right.
super obscure and random. There we go.
Yeah, I have no clue what you're talking about. Awesome. Cool.
Just a gum from the '80s they don't make anymore.
Teresa, anything relevant you'd like to share? No.
Well, not as relevant as Creed's request, but if you want to go to my YouTube channel and check out my videos, that'll be nice. And I also have a comic on Webtoons called Graduation Nightmares. So if you're on Webtoons, go check it out if you have a minute.
Yes, I recommend both, and I do recommend Creed's channel too, even though he hasn't been super active with his videos, but there's a lot of good stuff to dig into back in his archive there.
Oh, and my schedule is just opened up, and that's on my priority list.
Awesome. All right, so today, once again, I wanted to talk about creative burnout, and so basically, I think the way I'll kind of start it off is kind of telling a bit of a story. It's not like an amazing story; it's just what happened last week. And basically, I was getting to a point where I was about to have burnout, and I avoided it. And this is not something that I'm super familiar with. I hear people talk about burnout all the time, and I can kind of relate to a certain degree, but I think I'm a little bit either too lazy or don't have enough time to get into burnout sometimes. I guess I get there. I get close to it sometimes, or sometimes I do get to it, and it has stopped me in the past. I've had long gaps of not working on projects and stuff in the past, but that's not in recent history. It hasn't been so much because I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is having a creative habit that, and again, the 100 Days of Making Comics started by Kevin Cross, half an hour comics every day. That again is, I've said it a million times, but it's definitely changed how I work and helped me get more productive. So that's a great thing. That's like established. That's what I do, and I don't have really a problem with that. That's not going to really cause me to have burnout so much. But what does is some of my other goals that I've kind of added to that. And this has been, it's kind of a big experiment. It's a challenge that I've kind of put to myself. And that's this year, starting obviously in January. I wanted to put out three videos, hopefully ones that are good, like quality as far as editing, or at the very least have some good research behind them so that they actually gain traction. Because I've put out over 700 videos on my YouTube channel, and it's still just have recently gotten to 1,000 subscribers, which it's great. I'm not complaining, but if I was doing, like, basically other people I've seen have done, gotten to 1,000 in like less than a year, and it's because of the way they put out videos and stuff. And we could talk about that kind of another time, but I know how to do the things that a lot of those people have done. I just haven't taken the time to do it. I could put out a video every day. It wouldn't even be a problem, but is it going to be a video that people really are attracted to? Is it going to be one that, has, gains the traction because there's, a little bit of research done behind it? That's a whole different story. So there's that. And then also putting out a comic offering on Patreon every month has been something, that I'm still trying to figure out how to make it happen. And so that's been tough. And then to add on to that is just my normal stuff that I'm working on, the Hundreds anthology, the Werewolves and Unicorns anthology, and other projects that I have going on. Some of them are collaborations, some of them are more on the personal side. So it's been a lot. I put more, the problem is I put more on my plate probably than I should have. But some of it I still want to keep, like the Patreon thing, really all of it I still want to keep. I just have to manage it better. But I got to a point where I was getting close to burnout, where I knew it was like this, I could feel it, like this is going to take me out if I don't do something now. And so like last week I was kind of getting to that point. And I think a big part of it is knowing the signs when it's coming. And I know that I can get to a point where I'll just stop working and then I'll be off for like months and stuff. I haven't had that in a long time, but I've had it in the past and I don't want to have that happen. So I could feel that coming last week and I was like kind of freaking out a little bit. So what I had to do was pare down on some of my stuff. I'm doing more live streams right now, which is makes getting the videos out easier for sure. And especially until I get my 100th anthology work done, because I really want to make sure I get that in on time. That's like probably my biggest goal right now. And then there's also so I felt the signs like this is starting to get to the point where like I'm thinking about YouTube and I'm thinking about comics and I'm feeling like I don't want to do them anymore. Like I'm feeling like it's just too overwhelming. I'm losing the desire and the excitement that's there. And it's kind of related to that whole thing of do you work when you're inspired? Do you have to be inspired to work? And I guess that's actually interesting. We have Creed and Teresa on anyways, because I think they can add to that. But also like, um, you know, just this whole thing of like feeling excited, like when that excitement starts going down, like I don't have to feel inspired to work. I can, that's why habit is such a big part of this. um, but there's a certain amount of excitement that's even there, even when I don't really want to do it. I still have enough desire there, but I was getting to the point where I'm like, I want to give up type of thing. And that wasn't a good thing. So what ended up happening, I'm doing 365 days of making comics again this year, which is just kind of a continuation of 100 days of making comics. And it helps me to stay on task. But I actually missed 2 days last week. One is allowable. I allow myself one day, but the second one was like, I was just like, I can't, I have to take a break or else if I don't take a break right now, I'm gonna, I know I'm gonna like crash and burn. So I actually kind of took the whole weekend off. I mean, I did a little bit. I really only took 2 days off. I did the basics of what I had to do for my, half an hour every day. And I did like the absolute bare minimum for like the whole, like kind of a 3 day weekend. And I tell you, like just doing that, like it got me to the point where like I just stopped thinking about it. I stopped looking at, YouTube analytics. I stopped looking at all my social media stuff for like a good 3 days. And I just basically took a break from all of it for the most part and enjoyed some time with family, which was actually a really good part of it that helped. And I just didn't worry about it. And having those 3 days was like almost like a cleanse or something. And then Monday I came back and I'm like, okay, I have the energy that I need again now, and I'm not threatened. I don't have this threatening, looming burnout that's about to come. So, I actually avoided it, which I was actually happy that I made myself, even though I had to break my 365 days of making comics. I think it was more important that I did that than continue and burn out. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to tell that story, and then I have some other notes, but I wanted to ask you guys: have you guys ever experienced burnout, or have you been able? Like, do you have any tips on avoiding it and seeing the signs and things like that?
Do you want to go first, Creed?
Sure. Let me see here. Burnout. Since I started this current, I guess my current wave of art, which is like the last 3 or 4 years, it's all like there's so many villains and there's so many cartoon characters that I want to draw. And so it's sort of making me burnout proof because I really want to, if I don't really want to draw the guy I'm drawing right now, then I really, really want to draw somebody else next. So there's always a favorite somewhere in the hopper. So I kind of can't burn out on that. But I'm burning out a little bit on social media lately. That's just because my time was really tight, and all I could really focus on was my Instagram. And actually, I'm reposting my 100 villains, but I'm reposting them as a sort of the story of how far apart they were, which is burnout related. Because if I have one that's, well, it wasn't 2 months until I drew the next one. Well, those 2 months that was burnout. So it's kind of a retrospective of how well I was doing at the time. So if I have a month where maybe I did 20 in a row, 2 days apart, that was a fantastic time in my life. But if I was like, well, it was 3 months and then I drew another one, that was a hard 3 months and I was burnt out. So I'm kind of looking back. I'm sort of cutting through the tree of my 100 villains and looking at the rings.
Interesting. Teresa?
Oh, okay. So yes, I have experience with burnout. I have had some very bad cases of it, but with like my day job, when I first started working, I got really obsessed with doing everything. And there are jobs where you can't do everything. That there's always you're gonna go home and there's something left to do every single day, and that really burnt me out. And I ended up with like a stress leave for 3 days because I had, well, I was I had a case of malnutrition because I wasn't eating. So yeah, I've experienced really bad burnout. But with art, well, that taught me something, and is that there are times when you have to push because it's a situation that demands you to push and grow. But the majority of life is not those critical moments. It's not always a critical moment, and you have to separate when is a critical moment for you to push past your limits and when is a moment to just go to work and come back and have a life. It can't always be grinding, grinding, grinding. There are moments for that.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. You have to allow like breathing time. I heard it said somewhere that way, and I thought that made a lot of sense. And yeah, it's interesting. The relationship between basically, because the thing is you don't want, like, there's kind of these two different sides. Like I feel like sometimes I look at myself and I look around me at other people as well, and I see this in myself and other people, that it's like sometimes I wonder, are we challenging ourselves enough? Are you know could we really do more? I think sometimes, a lot of times, we don't challenge ourselves enough, but at the same time, you can go so much too far with that as well. So I do try to challenge myself past what I feel like is a little bit realistic. Like, it's good to have realistic goals, but it's good to also kind of push it a little bit further. And it's okay, kind of, if you do that and you come out finding out that you didn't 100% live up to that. Like, for instance, making a comic, having a comic offering to my patrons every month. I'm finding that this month and next month, I'm actually going to give them comics that I already made in the past, because I really want to focus on making sure I get the werewolves and unicorns thing out. But it's comics that most people haven't even read, so it is new to them. But for me, it's like, that's kind of my way of getting out of doing some of the extra work that's kind of messing me up with some other stuff I have to get done. So it's like, that kind of is disappointing to me, because I wanted to be at the end of this year being like, look, I got 12 new comics done, but maybe I will only have like 10 or something. But it's like, if you really look at it, it's like, oh, but those are 10 or even 8 comics that you wouldn't have had if you didn't put this goal out there. So it's
Yeah,
like if I
exactly.
fail, I'm still succeeding, but it's just not quite to where I thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? So there's like this
Yeah.
balance between challenging yourself and challenging yourself too much.
Yep. Yep.
That's sort of what I'm doing this year. Usually, I try to set an art number with the last, I don't know, many years, and last year just it didn't work out that way. And so I'm kind of going on a new system. I'm going to give myself a to-do list that's bigger than I can do, and it's
Mm,
almost like they say, punch through the board and don't aim for the board, and then
mm.
you'll really get through it. Well, I'm gonna aim for more than I can do, and I'll do more than if I just did what I think I can do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, like what I think about this sort of thing is that it is true that sometimes you have to punch through the board and all these things, but not every punch you throw can be with that aim because you have limits. So I think it's just separating for me is just simply the idea that you can't always have the defining moment, the moment of growth. Moments of growth come at the time when they have to come, and moments
Yeah.
of extraordinary achievement comes at the moments where they have to come. You can't always be making extraordinary achievements. You know what I mean?
There has to be some regular time in the middle somewhere.
Exactly. That's what I mean. So it's like putting that pressure on you that you always have to be extraordinary or above your level. That's what I think it burns you out
Yeah,
because that's not
that's a good
realistic.
point because I think I kind of did that with YouTube. Like, I want it to be better. Like, I want the quality to be better because that's a big part of what will make me succeed more than I have in the past. Because it's not about just putting out tons of videos; it's about putting out good videos that people want to see. So there's that. So I really went like crazy with the editing for a good basically for a month or a little less, and I had to pull back on that a little bit. I'm still doing more than I was originally doing, and enough to actually help move the needle forward or whatever. I don't know if that's the greatest phrase for it, but you know, but you know, I I'm still doing more, but it's a little bit more realistic, where, I'm not putting everything into editing and spending hours and hours and hours because I don't have that time. But I think the quality is still there and still pretty good, and I'm hitting on things a little bit better than I was before. So I think you're right. You can't always be like amazing. You have to kind of have, like you said, this level of realistic quality, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's check in with the chat real quick, and then we'll get back to this. Devonte Edwards says, "Howdy, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming on." Dave Hingley's here. What's up, dude? He says, "Do you think there's a difference between fatigue and burnout?" I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think burnout's more of a concept, and fatigue is more of a just out of energy.
Yep. Yeah. Fatigue is when you're basically another name for like tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas burnout is more like, I don't want to do this anymore. You're just burned out. You lost your motivation and you become very cynical as well. I find when I'm burned out, it's like, who cares about comics anyway?
That's
So it's more than being tired.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because fatigue. It's interesting though, because fatigue is different than just straight up tired too.
Yeah,
Fatigue
fatigue is
is.
usually more of a weary than anything.
Mm,
Like you're
yeah,
just out of energy.
I think it is related to burnout though, because it's a little bit more than just tired. Because you wouldn't say like at the end of the night when you're tired and it's ready to go to bed that you're fatigued necessarily,
Yeah.
or it's more of something that might. I feel like it would last a few days, at least. Like it's, I don't know, there's something different about it, and I think it is related to burnout. But I think burnout encompasses more than just being tired. There's like Teresa was saying. There's you start to feel cynical. There might be anxiety, depression, things like that kind of added to burnout, I think, and it usually is work related. I think burnout. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting though to think about. Dave Hingley also says, I've not been getting the usual amount of sleep this week. I am still happy to work on comics, just wish I had a little more energy. So yeah, actually that's a good way to kind of separate it. You know, you're tired, but you're not burnt out because you're still energized about your work. You're just physically tired, you know. So
Yeah, yeah. I've been tired this week, but I'm not burnt out.
mm,
But it's the spring. The spring makes me tired. I don't know why. Super hot over here.
right. So do you guys have any kind of things that you do to specifically avoid the onset of burnout, or do you know what the signs are, you know, for yourself? Because I think it's very individual for everybody. Like, you know, you can you kind of tell when it's like, oh, it's starting to creep up on me, I need to do something, you know, about it?
Mm. Creed, do you have?
Oh, yeah. I was. It's like we're at a stop sign. I'm like, are you going? Am I going?
It's like I don't know. You're Canadian. I don't want to interrupt you.
I used to have actually a toolbox in like a mental toolbox for stuff like that because early on, like I say, once I started all this stuff, I didn't get burnout, but it sort of faded away. So early on, I was getting burnout, and sometimes, like I said, there'd be months where I wouldn't draw, and that's just I have a weird way of looking at that though because I look at that more of not related to me, more related to how things go. So what I kind of look at is okay, the universe is going to sometimes it'll let me draw and sometimes it won't. And those times where it won't are going to come. So you got to prepare. So I sort of got some mental toolbox things to get myself going. Like my main one, and actually it's strange. I haven't listened to this in a long time, but I used to take the soundtrack from GTA Vice City, the radio stations, and I used to listen to those, and I I basically programmed my mind to if I'm listening to those, I'm drawing. And after a while, that became my art music. And that worked a lot of times. I'd get really burnt out and I didn't want to. I could tell I was getting burnt out when I'd be inking something and it would take 4 days instead of 1 or 2. You know,
Mm,
like just, I could just tell I was slowing down. And then I get my Vice City Art Studio going. That's what I called it when I fired that music on. And then it would just automatically energize me. I don't know. Yeah, but I had to train myself, like only do it when you're drawing, stuff like that, and it just your brain associates it, and it'll help.
that's really interesting. Yeah, there's always these like weird little psychological tricks and stuff that you can kind of come up with. Like you have to like trick yourself to work sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. When you're using your brain, like especially in a creative way, not even just normally, like you're being creative is a sort of a different mode for your brain.
Hmm.
And even if you're used to it, it is a different mode than just regular thinking and regular living. So you want gold from your brain. So you have to really like go, okay, how can I trick my brain today if it's not gonna do what I want it to do? And
Mm.
yeah, that's all I started doing was just hacking my brain like that, and it worked. And now actually, like I said, I haven't had to do that in a while.
Mm.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
and it's interesting too, like forcing like the thing is there is this sense of you need to force yourself to work, you know, even when you're you know, because you have to get, especially if you're doing this as a professional and you're trying to make a living at it, you know,
Yeah,
there is times where it's like you might not really want to work, but you kind of have to get your butt in the chair and force yourself. But then forcing yourself can also be a big detriment. I mean, Creed, you've actually talked about this at length, about this idea of what is it, the I can't think of the term. People talk about it all the time on these videos, like when like you would say you're an artist who works when you're inspired, or you at least you have in the past.
oh yeah, I'm definitely an inspiration artist, and it's actually, and I'm not bragging because that's the worst kind of artist to be. I just can only work if like it's almost like there's a little pilot light in my head, and if that pilot light's not on, I cannot. I can pound on the desk, I can do whatever. I am not going to. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. You can physically make art anytime, but I find I don't like any of the stuff I force at all. And it
Mm.
just I've never come up with anything forced that I would accept. So I just stopped even trying to force anything. And it's kind of sucks that you can only work when you're inspired. And people say, like, people will kind of jump against that, like, oh, you just can't do that. Well, that's all I have. That's it. That's my art system. And if it's not working, it does not work, and I can't make it work. So
Well, I've also heard you say that, when you do force it, it actually messes you up. Like you said that, like when you actually sit down and force it, like to me, it's like I don't have it's this whole art block thing. Like I don't have art block because and I would be more of the type of person who says, well, it doesn't exist. But because of you, I don't say that anymore because, like, the thing is to me, art block doesn't exist because I can sit down and work in my sketchbook and draw a lot of crappy drawings, and I'm okay with that. But for some people, like you've said in your videos, if you do that, you'll get really discouraged by the art that you do,
oh yeah,
that's crappy, and it'll actually stop you from working further.
yeah.
And that's not a good thing, obviously.
No, see, I'm my own worst critic. That's why I have super different systems for art than most people, and I don't recommend any of mine. I recommend the regular ones that everybody else talks about. But yeah, with that, I'm not a sketcher. I draw my art that I'm doing, and I don't really draw outside of that. Like I don't scribble and then that, because that's not my art. I want to make an actual good finished piece of art, and it's really the only thing I do. So if I was sketching, well, actually, it's weird because I used to doodle a lot. Of, like, if I'm at a job or something, and I could have a piece of paper nearby, then I guess I never considered that art, but I guess that's what a lot of people do in their sketchbooks. So I sort of have that somewhere in my life, but I don't have it as I'm going to sketch because, like you said, if I sketch 10 things and I hate 5 of them and I love 5 of them, it's that hate that will ruin my whole vibe, and I won't be able. I'll just be like, look, I drew this terrible and that terrible and this terrible, and I just can't. No, it gets to me too much. So I like to only draw. It's weird to say, but I only like to draw good things.
Yeah.
So if they don't turn out good, that's a punch in the head to me, and I can only take so many punches before I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go watch some TV. I'm not, that's it for me today. I'm shaking,
Yeah. And it's
But
good
that's
be
me.
able to,
That's me judging, though. That's a built-in thing to me. That's not really built into the universe.
yeah. I think there's something to that, though. There is something to not forcing yourself. There's a certain point where if you force yourself, it'll be worse than if you take a break. And actually, I think I've heard you talk about that recently on one of your videos, Teresa. What do you think about that whole idea?
Taking breaks. Well, yeah, I do believe that sometimes it is ridiculous to push past stuff. Like nobody can judge it better than you, and I think unless you are a professional. Well, that this is not a profession, but unless you're really good at lying to yourself, or you have some sort of, I don't know, weird thing in your head, I think we're all perfectly capable of knowing where our limits are and where they're not. And as you say, Creed, like if you know that that's really gonna impact your mood and your future work, then why would you push past that?
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
if the next day you're gonna wake up and you're not gonna want to draw, how is that productive?
Yeah, that's why if I
Uh,
feel like kind of burnt out or whatever, I'll take time off, and I find whatever I draw next is better because of that.
exactly, yeah.
Mm.
So I was talking, like what you're talking about is that I was talking about recovery. And in sports, that I was listening to this interview that this journalist has been researching sports recovery, which is an area of sports science, and this is an area that has never been researched before. I think they started 20 years ago researching how recovery helps build muscle, because apparently you don't build muscle when you're lifting weights, you build muscle when you're resting.
Mm.
And this has also been researched in education. You don't learn something when you're studying it, you learn it when you're sleeping.
Mm.
So yeah, it's that idea that rest is part of the process, so that you can integrate the things you've learned, so that you can integrate everything. So
Yeah,
growth doesn't happen without rest.
that's such an interesting thing, and I remember you talking about the sports thing, and it's so interesting. You definitely need to take a step back, and like I said, like I literally I had to take those days off, and it didn't make sense because I had too much stuff to get done. Like that, if I could have spent the whole weekend working on comics, that would have been really helpful for me to get progress done. So it was really counterintuitive to be like, you know what, I'm just not even gonna work on it at all this weekend. But I tell you, if I hadn't done that, I probably, I don't know, you might have not heard from me this week. um, and that wouldn't have been good because it would kind of take me way too far out of my goals. So yeah, I don't know. Forcing it, sometimes you have to just, you actually have to force yourself to take a break that you don't want to, you know.
Yeah.
um, and like you said, you know, muscle is actually built, you know, during that time. And, you know, people talk about this idea of like, you know, kind of look at your goals or maybe do a little research on something right before you go to bed, because, you know, in the subconscious, your subconscious will start working some of those things out, you know, and then when you wake up, you might find that you're able to attack, you know, whatever problem you were working on better, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
definitely.
like there's many stories about that. Like the guy, I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with names. But the guy that discovered the structure of benzene, which is well, he got the Nobel Prize of Chemistry, and the guy discovered it one day when he was just like chilling. And there's many stories like that. They were working at a problem for ages, and then they took a few days to rest or whatever, and suddenly, like the eureka moment of Archimedes, he discovered the solution to the problem while he was taking a bath.
Hmm.
It's not when he was sat down breaking and racking his brains about it, but racking his brains about it for ages was what solved the problem. But before he rested, you know, like there's a relationship. You have to work hard and then you have to rest, and then that's the equation that works.
You
You
need the
can't just work,
processing
work,
time.
work. Yeah, exactly.
It'd be interesting to have like I can't help but think of certain people who I know are like really big workhorses. I can't help but think of like Gaz, our mutual friend. Um, and you know, he's really strong on like the professional side of things, but you can see like in his videos as well. And I wish he was here to talk about it. I'd love to hear his comment on it. But you know, you can see how much he emphasizes professionalism, and how much you know, kind of he'll work a panel, and it's just like you can tell after you see it finished, like when you look at his comics, like he really puts a lot of work into those panels. And you can also see in his process, like he'll work a panel, and if it's not working, he'll just rework it and rework it. But he does talk about eventually, you know, he has to just accept where it's at and kind of either take a break and come back to it, or you know, sometimes you just have to kind of settle at some point. You know, and you know, I don't know. It's just interesting. There's that, and also just but you'll see like even him, you know, you'll see that he'll have some goals sometimes, and he'll kind of not do them as well, you know. So I don't know. I don't really want to pick on him exactly, but just like there's a lot of people in this community, our friends and stuff, who really emphasize professionalism, working hard, pushing. But I think we all, you know, we just all have to know our limits, and you know, I guess also I did want to make sure I brought up this other comment too, because Marius said he couldn't be here, but he did want to add to the conversation, and this is a whole other interesting take. And it has to do with like other people's expectations, and just seeing other people's like this whole like compare and despair. But also he brought something even different to it. And I'm trying to see. Oh, he was saying like, um, it's easy to be like, if you're somebody who's very goal oriented or whatever, like you're working in a collaborative kind of environment, and you see people around you who are you're working with, and they're kind of dropping the ball a little bit, like to try to go and fill in where they're dropping the ball. That can
Yeah.
actually lead to burnout as well, and sometimes people take on more than they're even supposed to. Have you guys ever run into that situation?
Mm. Yeah. More in my personal life than at work, I have to say. And
Mm,
I think it leads to a lot of resentment, and it leads to a lot of like posing relationships, really. And then you get the typical comments, when you were doing this, I was doing that, and it's like it's not helping anybody. Maybe things get done, but relationships get broken over that.
mm,
And it's all about what you value. But I think relationships are more important than doing excellent work all the time.
absolutely. And I think some of that too is communication. Um, because I've run into that situation many times before, actually, and you might come to find out years later that somebody was like really frustrated with you, or you were really frustrated with them, but you didn't actually communicate that to each other. So one person was taking up the slack, whereas maybe if they mentioned, hey, this isn't fair that I have to do this, or you know, this is what you're supposed to be doing. I really need you to do that because it's affecting, the whole project, or whatever, like all that kind of stuff. Sometimes the communication isn't there. People are afraid to say things, and then, like you said, they get resentful, um, and there becomes an issue that maybe the other person, people aren't even aware of, that are involved. And I think communication's a big part of that. Sometimes things can be avoided, but also, sometimes people can just go down, there'd be too much communication, and people will be at each other's throats too. So it's tricky.
Yeah, it is.
um let's see, James is in the chat. He's saying hi, what's up, yo? um yeah, I don't know. I think let's see. Let me see if there's anything else on my list. We kind of really talked a lot about this pretty well. I know it's good to create realistic habits, knowing your limits. Let's see what else. I guess this compare and despair thing, I think comes into play as well. And it's like I feel like I've gotten better at that, but it's that always creeps in too. I mean, with my YouTube channel, I think about it a little bit, and I mean, I have a pretty good, um, I guess, self-esteem with that nowadays. Like, I know who I am. I know how bad I am and how good I am at certain things. I think I'm pretty aware. So I'm kind of okay. I don't get like into these spots of jealousy like I did sometimes before as much, or like, but still, that every once in a while that like compare and despair thing does creep its ugly head out, and it's definitely something to address. And kind of knowing who you are, where you're at. Like, to me, doing a comic a month and doing 3 videos a week, and working on all these other projects, that's just enough for me to like not to like be hard enough, but still achievable. And if I don't achieve it, I'm still pushing myself harder than I would, but it's not too much. It's getting close to too much. But for somebody else, they might only be able to produce 1 video a month, or no videos, but they can just work on their comic, or, you know, they can only work on one project, or whatever it is. Like, you have to kind of know yourself, know where you're at. And it takes, this is me working on the videos and comics for many years, where I've gotten some systems down. So there's some things where other people might be still learning how to do some of that stuff. So it takes longer for them to do every step. And I kind of look up to other people myself who work quicker and make better progress than I'm making. And I can easily get to this point. Well, oh man, I want to be like where they're at or whatever. And it's just that comparison thing is helpful in some ways to challenge yourself, but at the same time, it can help you lead to burnout as well. So, do you guys ever get caught in that loop of comparing too much, or?
I find the absolute best thing. I've kind of purposely turned this into a habit. What I do is I compare myself to my old self. What did I used to do? Oh, I didn't make as much art as I do now. My art wasn't as good as it is now, and that makes me feel better than trying to compare myself to. Well, yeah, I'm no, Art Adams or whoever, because that's a losing battle. If you're comparing yourself, especially to somebody who's been making art way longer than you on a professional basis and whatever else, like really, really good guys, yeah, you're just gonna depress yourself. So I just go, hey, I used to think I was really great, and compared to now, I sucked. So I'm a hero to myself, It's just like, yeah, doing pretty good. I go, 10-year-old me, 10 years ago, me would be super happy with what I'm doing right now. And you got to kind of think of it that way.
Yeah.
And I find I think the main key, because everybody gets burnout in different ways, but I think the very main key is, before you even feel any sign of burnout, look for inspiration every day purposely so you don't get burnout.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even write that down, but it's something I is very important to me, is this kind of intentional inspiration. But I think, when you're coming to the point of burnout, like, it's good to continually inspire yourself. But when you're coming to that point of burnout, like where I was last week, I automatically thought of this whole idea of intentional inspiration, because that's a big part of what I do. But I almost didn't want to get inspired, because I know that would push me to work past my limit to the point where I would stop working. Like, I knew I was approaching burnout, and if I inspired myself, I would have just burnt out even harder,
Yeah, it would have been months until you did anything.
Exactly. So I totally agree. But sometimes you do need to just take that break as well.
Oh yeah.
What about you, Teresa, on comparing yourself? Do you ever? Oh, and also I just wanted to highlight that was a really good point as far as like compare yourself to yourself. That's actually more healthy than comparing yourself to others. But Teresa, do you get into that trap sometimes of comparing yourself to others?
Yeah. I have to say I completely agree with Creed, the compare yourself to yourself, but I think there is something to comparing yourself to others as well, because it gives you something to aim for. So for example, if there were no comics in the world, or well, no comics in the world, no, if there were no people that I knew of that make comics, I couldn't, like, I don't know. The comparison sometimes is guidance, and sometimes when it generates jealousy and self-deprecation is bad. So it depends on how you do it. So sometimes I compare myself to people, and it's unhealthy, because I'm saying, like, the things that come to my head as like, I'm so rubbish, I will never do this. So those are the bad things, right? So that's where I know that I'm in the wrong mindset and I shouldn't be doing it. Whereas sometimes I'm comparing myself to people and saying like, oh, so this person did this in this time. Okay, so that gives me an idea of where I should be. You know what I mean? Like, it gives me an idea of how well or bad I'm doing, so that I can think about strategies to improve, or give myself a pat in the back.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Like, I mean, it can be very helpful, because like, I tend to compare myself to like old creators like Jack Kirby and stuff, and like, of course, if there's anybody to despair by comparing yourself to. But people like him, but just all these other older creators who, they would produce so many pages and they would do it quickly. And to me, that's inspiring. And like the whole Marvel method, and like just this idea of working quickly, producing a lot, being very prolific. And I know not everybody agrees with me on that. I'm learning the balance between quality and quantity. But to me, it's like I see that and I'm like, because I look at that and then I look at the way me and my friends are producing, and I'm like, we're not living up to what we should be doing, you know, like we could do so much more, we could do so much better. And sometimes I just feel like the bar is set too low, you know, in general, even in like the whole community sometimes. And it's like no, no, we can do much better. Like we need to push ourselves a little more. But then again, you know, you can get into a bad cycle and it can lead to burnout. And also it's something that I always forget, but it's so true, is that Jack Kirby was penciling. He was penciling pages. That's it. And
Yeah.
also he had like 40, or he had like 30 years of experience before he got to that point where he was producing, you know, more than one book a month and stuff like that. So it's like, you know, he was doing one job on a book and he was so well practiced. He had his style down. You know, I mean, you got to take all that stuff into fact. We're like doing penciling, inking, coloring, lettering, producing, you know, putting the book out, promoting, like
Yeah, exactly.
you got to give yourself a break.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, and to me, it's easy to remember because my day job is as a teacher, and all the time I see this thing where I'm teaching, and my students are like, I teach English as a foreign language, right? And I prepare people for official exams, and maybe I'm preparing someone for an intermediate English examination, and they are like, I'm so rubbish. You are, and they compare themselves to me, and I'm like. Um, no, you're comparing yourself to the teacher. How, like, you have to look at the criteria for the exam that you're doing and realize that you're doing very well, and then you will continue practicing and you will continue learning and you can take the next examination. But they always like start huffing and puffing about, you know, how bad they're doing when they're doing actually really good.
Mm.
And it's because they're not making the correct comparisons.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting hearing it from a teacher's perspective. And, um, you know, it's also really interesting. I don't think I connected the dots. I knew you taught, and I know you're also going to school for some things, but I guess I didn't realize that you were teaching English as a second language. And it's interesting
Yeah.
because you speak really well English. I always thought that. So I was like, now I get a big part of why that is. is
Exactly. So imagine like a student trying to learn and they're like, oh my God, but you're so good. And I'm like, I'm the teacher.
Yeah, you're supposed to be good.
That's awesome.
Exactly. I already passed all my examinations. Now it's your turn.
All right, so we do have a little more in the chat. Let's see. Dave just got back. What's up? Thanks for coming back. James, you missed a lot. You got to go watch the replay. No.
Hope he didn't leave the door open on his way back in.
Yeah. Let's see. James says, it took me a long time to stop comparing myself to everyone else, but I made it a challenge and am much happier now. That's awesome. Yeah, it's really hard to not get into that trap. I mean, especially in this day and age, like just go on Instagram and you know, you feel inadequate real quick.
Yeah.
James says, I did have to give up on social media for a long time to do it. Yeah, so there you go. And that's part of it too. And I guess that's kind of part of this topic that I didn't actually bring up yet, which is the social media aspect can lead you to burnout as well, because it's adding something, like, especially when your thing is to make comics. Comics are hard enough and take enough time as it is. Adding social media, I mean, it's kind of crazy that I'm trying to do 3 videos a week and trying to do comics. I know it's crazy, but it's part of my goal. It's part of what I want to do. I enjoy making videos. And also, you know, I believe that it's a strategy for me to be able to have more time for my comics later and to build a career. To me, YouTube is just something that makes sense, and I have to go with it. And I think it's going to help me in the long run. So, you know, and you have to balance it. And that's the thing with social media. And I've talked about this before, but to me, the biggest thing with social media is you have to kind of create your own recipe with it. You have to know which social medias you like, you enjoy, and just stick with those only. Like, I've cut out deviant art a long time ago, and I'm never going to go back. It takes too much time. It's cumbersome. It's frustrating. Traction's hard to get. So there's that. I kind of cut out Twitter, but I've been messing around with that a lot more lately because I've been able to come back to it after kind of cutting it out for a long time. Facebook is kind of a given, unfortunately, but I don't love Facebook, but there's actually a lot of good things about it. And if I look at my analytics, I actually get most of my traction, most of my views and YouTube come from Facebook. So, it's kind of a necessary evil, but I've been doing that one for a long time, and I know what I'm doing there. So it's not that big a deal. I don't have to push too hard to make that happen. But you have to know where your limits are on social media. I know a lot of artists who don't even mess with social media at all, and they're very productive, or they're just very bare minimum on social media, and they're super productive, and and they have a career, so you don't even have to be doing social media. So you definitely, to me, social media is like, it's something that is not necessary, but it can be helpful. So you have to kind of judge what your relationship is with that, what your priority is, as far as, is it stopping you from creating what you want to create or not. So it's not, I'm not saying it's easy decisions, but it's okay to cut out a lot of social media, and that can lead to burnout. So keep an eye out for that, for sure. What do you guys think about the whole social media part of burnout?
For me, it's sort of more integrated into my art than a lot of people, because when I post, I'm posting to I call my tribe Retromaniacs, and the cool thing is they're like, yeah, your art's great, and that's one subject they'll talk about. But then they'll talk about, like, hey, well, they'll talk about the show I drew from, or another, and that's, once you start drawing a pile of stuff, then people are automatically going to go, oh, what about this guy, and what about that guy? And I love that, and that comes straight from my audience. So I get people talking very easily with my art, and that encouraged me back. So it's more of a mirror of inspiration in a way from the people, because and they'll start talking about a show that I know about but haven't thought about in a while, and I'm like, oh, now I have to draw somebody from that. And it's just it's more of a gear in the motor, and it's an important gear. So I have cut down on it. Like I said, I'll stick with like just one or two when time is short, but I still really like to let all my people know that I have no stuff to show.
That's cool. What about you, Teresa? How's
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of social media. I always thought it was silly. Actually, my Facebook, I didn't even make my own Facebook. It was a friend of mine at university. She was like, you can't go around without social media, and she made me a Facebook account. She took a picture she had taken of me, and she made me a Facebook profile, and that's how I started with social media. And in my view, it's a necessary evil for me, because I personally don't enjoy it. I know a lot of people love it, but for me, it's just, I feel disconnected. I feel, it makes me feel lonely, I guess, because, you have all these people commenting, but they're just letters and pictures, and I don't know who they are really. And I prefer to talk to people and meet people in real life. But I have to say that it is a necessary evil, because the publishing world has changed a lot. And nowadays, even if you get it in with a big publisher, they will expect you to do your own marketing and publicity through social media. So even if you got a contract with Image, or even if you got a publisher, they're not going to take care of your publicity. You have to do that. That's the reality of publishing nowadays. So you have to do it.
It's a good point. And I'm glad that you think it's a necessary evil, because then now we're able to know you a little more and be able to see your awesome art and stuff.
I just wish that we could like teleport into a room and just talk to each other, but that's impossible. but that would
Yeah.
be my ideal situation.
Yeah, it's definitely better that way. It's always good to have art friends who are in your actual life too. But unfortunately, it's hard to find people who are into exactly what you're into sometimes. So,
Yeah,
you know, that's
absolutely. Yeah.
that's the part that I think is really good about social media, actually.
Yes, I would agree with that. Despite my using the term evil is maybe a bit extreme, but you know what I mean, right? Like
Absolutely.
I'm not a huge fan of the whole thing, but I like connecting with people. That's for sure. That's the
Yeah.
good thing.
If I didn't have art, I wouldn't have any social media. But I
Same.
don't hate it because I'm doing art. So it goes with it. But yeah, for me personally, like just as a person, I don't have anything I need to say on social media.
Yeah. And I'm pretty much the same way. It's my art really is the reason why. So I'm gonna check the chat real quick again, and then I think it's about that time. And Dave Hingley says, I don't really post on social media. I barely post on Facebook. I only post art on Twitter as part of the Hundreds Challenge. And your YouTube videos. That's social media as well, Dave. And I'm glad you do that because I like to check out your updates for sure. James says, yeah, I rarely post anywhere. Instagram usually when I do. Yeah, Instagram's a great place to just kind of dump stuff and, make a little bit of traction and also to be inspired. So yeah, I get that. Um, and Marius is just in time to catch the end, and we're just about to leave. Thanks for coming on, guys. You guys rock. And Devante is saying hi again too. Yeah, I just before we go though, Teresa Creed. I guess we'll start with Teresa. Let everybody know where they can find you again.
I'm here on YouTube, and Teresa del Pilar, just my name, and I'm also on Instagram. And if you want to read my webcomic, it's on Webtoon, and it's called Graduation Nightmares. So you can search that if you want.
Awesome, and let's see if Creed can do a better job about telling us where we can find
Okay,
his.
let's do a gum-free promo here. My Instagram is Creed Stonegate. That is, I do daily posts, minimum daily, and I post my art and my inspiration on there. So there's a lot of 80s stuff and retro things. And beside from that, my website is my store, and I've been working a lot on that. You can get stickers of my art there, infinitecoolness.com. And soon, my YouTube page, which Marsh always links to, will be live and full of stuff again. I'm working on it.
Awesome. And I'll throw that link in for your actual website in there too. But other than that, the links are in the description. And I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us in the chat and watching on the replay. Let us know, what are some of the things you look out for when it comes to burnout, and how do you avoid it? Other than that, thanks for watching. You guys rock, and we will talk to you again in another episode. All right, peace out, guys.